Hi everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming. My name is Ben Adler. I'm an instructor here at PRC. Also do some CSR work and have been a presenter for Mary Blair and Tech Talk and Tech Tuesdays for a while now. So thanks for coming. A couple of pre-launch items on our checklist today. I think we've probably covered one of them. If you've got a mobile device like I do, make sure that it's off or on mute, which mine is not, and it is now. And secondly is that I always allocate 10 or 15 minutes at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. So if you have something that comes up during the course of the presentation, hold on to it till about 1:45 and we'll try and answer your questions then. And the last thing on my pre-flight checklist is to make sure I'm at the right place and right time. Hey Cortana, what's on my schedule for today?
I'm finding one event today. At 11:30 a.m., Tech Talk and Windows 10 at PRC 201 South Naperville Road, Wheaton. Well,
I am at the right place and the right time, and it is Tuesday. It's Tech Talk, and our topic for today is Windows 10, the latest and greatest from Microsoft. I should introduce Cortana. Hey Cortana, say hi.
Hi.
Cortana is one of the features that we'll take a look at today, along with a couple of others. It's the digital personal assistant that's bundled with Windows 10, much like Siri is with Apple products, and Google Now is with Google, and I think we've got Echo now that has some voice-activated assistants as well. So we'll be taking a look at that, along with a couple of other things from Microsoft. Hey Cortana, start PowerPoint.
All right, starting Microsoft PowerPoint 2010.
I tell the story at the start of this presentation about the challenge that Microsoft faced when they came to the task of naming their new operating system that they were developing to replace Windows 8 and Windows 8.1. And the challenge was that both of those earlier operating systems, 8 and 8.1, were so poorly received by the marketplace that Microsoft wanted to figure out a way to put as much distance between their old products and their new product as possible. And so rather than stick with their traditional naming protocol of naming their new product Windows 9, they decided to skip over 9 and they just moved to Windows 10. Don't know whether there's truth to that story or not. There may be a little bit of truth to it, but I do know that Microsoft got a lot right with Windows 10 that they kind of dropped the ball with on Windows 8 and 8.1. So having said that, and having had Cortana launch PowerPoint for us, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of bullet points about Windows 10 before we start to take a look at some of the more interesting new features associated with the operating system. Windows 10 is a personal operating system that was released by Microsoft as part of their Windows NT family of operating systems. The first version of the operating system entered public beta testing in October 2014, leading up to its consumer release at the end of July last year. To encourage the transition to Windows 10, Microsoft announced that during its first year of availability, upgrades to the operating system would be made available free of charge to users of genuine copies of Windows 7 and Windows 8 after its having been updated to Windows 8.1. That was a pretty good deal. Windows 10 introduces what Microsoft described as a universal application architecture. These apps are designed to run across multiple Microsoft product families with nearly identical code, including products like PCs, tablets, smartphones, embedded systems, Xbox One, the Surface Hub, and HoloLens, which is their virtual reality product. So it's an operating system that's designed to run across a lot of different pieces of hardware. And finally, the Windows user interface was revised to handle transitions between a mouse-oriented interface and touchscreen optimized interface based on available input devices, particularly on 2-in-1 PCs. That's a long way of saying that the operating system is designed to allow users using a piece of equipment that is capable of both touchscreen use, keyboard and mouse use, to use those input devices seamlessly at the same time without any difficulty. Both interfaces include an updated Start menu, which we're going to talk about today, that blends elements of the Windows 7 traditional Start menu, along with the tile element that was introduced in Windows 8. And Windows 10 also introduces the Microsoft Edge browser, which we'll talk about, and Cortana, which we've had a brief introduction to. So this operating system has been out available in the marketplace for 16 months now, and every presentation that I do I update this. This is the operating system's market share for US desktops as of the end of October, starting in July of last year when the operating system was introduced. And this blue line is Windows 10. As you can see, it starts pretty much at 0 in July of last year. And our yellow line up here at the top is Windows 7, and you can see that there has been a steady deterioration of market share for 7, as Microsoft wants, and a steady increase in market share in 10, which they obviously want, such that at the end of October we're just about even Steven for those two. And going forward, it's expected and understood that Windows 7 will continue to decline further in market share, and Windows 10 will increase. Some of these other operating systems, you can see Windows 8, Windows 8.1 are all declining. OS 10 is, they're holding around 20% market share. But generally there's a downward trend on all of these other operating systems that are listed on this graph provided by StatCounter. And if you're really into the numbers, there they are across the board. Just looking at Windows 7, beginning in July of 2015, and slightly over 47% market share, ending at the end of October at 30, and Windows 10 basically at 0 in July of 2015, ending up October of this year at almost 29%. So the trend is inevitable, and if you're interested in the numbers for all of those other operating systems, they're available for your analysis. If you decide to move to Windows 10, a couple of heads up for you. Some features found in Windows 7, 8, and 8.1 aren't available in Windows 10. Specifically, Windows Media Center is not part of Windows 10. And a lot of people say, what's Windows Media Center? It was an all-encompassing media management application that was used in Windows 7 and 8 and 8.1. Did things like managing live TV, recording live TV, pictures, video management, that sort of thing. Good application, didn't have a wide embrace on the part of the user community, and consequently Microsoft elected to abandon it with the introduction of Windows 10. Windows Media Player, while it's still part of Windows 10, likely isn't going to play your DVDs. And in fact, in most cases, there isn't anything that comes as part of Windows 10 out of the box that's going to play a DVD unless you buy from Microsoft Store their Windows DVD player, which will set you back $15. However, there are some free alternatives that are available to you. A good one is VLC, the VLC Media Player, which is a free download. So you've got an option there. The other issue is that when you do upgrade to Windows 10, some hardware or software that functioned on Windows 7 or Windows 8 or Windows 8.1 might not work. For example, printers, pointing devices, scanners, sound cards, etc., and so on may not work. And that's not necessarily the fault of the operating system. That relates to the manufacturer of your hardware or the device that doesn't work. You need to check with the manufacturer of the software or hardware to determine its Windows 10 compatibility. For example, we're running this display presentation today off this laptop in front of me. It's an older machine. I think it's like circa 2008, 2009. It comes with an integrated 3-megapixel video camera that worked perfectly under Windows 7, doesn't work under Windows 10 by virtue of the fact that the manufacturer of the laptop, Lenovo, has elected not to upgrade the software that would allow the digital video camera that's integrated with the PC to work with Windows 10. It's kind of old. They're not going to devote resources to doing that. So check with the manufacturer of the software and and hardware. Old printers, old scanners, you might have a problem with. Some key dates. July 29, 2015, the consumer release of 2010. So it's been in the marketplace for over a year now. July 29 of this year, the free Windows 10 upgrade offer expired. No more freebies. If you're going to buy Windows 10, the Home Edition retails from Microsoft about $120. If you're going to buy Windows 10 Pro, it retails for about $200. January 14, 2020, end of Windows 7 extended support. What's that mean? Does that mean that if you have Windows 7 on your PC and on January 15th of 2020 you start your machine, what's going to happen? Your machine's going to run fine. It's going to boot up. It's going to do everything that it did on January 14th or 13th or 12th or anything that it did between now and then. What is going to change, however, is that Microsoft will no longer update the operating system, which isn't a good thing, because without those updates, the system will become more archaic and will become more vulnerable to perhaps penetration and attack than it otherwise might be. So it's never good to be using an outdated operating system, particularly one that isn't being updated regularly to keep it safe. January 10, 2023, the same thing will happen to Windows 8 and Windows 8.1 for those few that are still using that. It'll still work, just won't be updated Microsoft, and that presents some problems as far as vulnerability is concerned. So today we're going to look at 7 key new features of Windows 10, and down at the bottom here you'll notice that I've indicated that we're going to be using and are using the version 1607 of Windows 10. That's the so-called anniversary update that was released at the end of this July, just after the first anniversary of Microsoft's Windows 10 being in the marketplace. It is significantly better than the original release of Microsoft Windows 10 back in July of 2015, and that's what we're going to be using today for purposes of this demonstration. So those features are the new Start menu that combines both features of the original Start menu from Windows 7 and the new tile elements that were introduced in Windows 8 and 8.1. We're going to look at a little bit more of Cortana, the personal assistant that we've been introduced to already. We're going to take a look at the new Edge web browser that's bundled in Windows 10. Windows 10 also has the original Microsoft Internet Explorer, but it also has the new browser, and I'll explain why they're both involved. We're going to take a look at Task View, which is new to Microsoft's Windows 10. It is not a new feature, however, to PCs. Apple has used this notion of Task View or virtual desktops for quite a while in their desktop operating system, as well as most distributions of Linux use a virtual desktop. We're going to take a look at Snap Assist, which is a nice feature incorporated in Windows 10 that allows the easy display of multiple applications at the same time on your computer monitor or monitors. We'll take a look at Windows Defender, which has been significantly upgraded and beefed up in Windows 10, the anniversary update. And finally, we'll take a look at some privacy settings associated with Windows 10. You'll notice at the bottom of this screen I have the URL address for the Microsoft privacy statement. Are you all using Windows 10 or anyone using Windows 10? If you're using Windows 10, you'll be able to access their privacy statements from a variety of locations from within the operating system. If you're not using Windows 10 and you're interested in knowing what their privacy policies are, that web address will get you there. Pour yourself a big cup of coffee, sit back and have a nice long read. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. And here is our Windows 10 desktop. It's got basically all of the same elements as Windows 7, a desktop, which I have cleared of any desktop icons. Now at the bottom we have a taskbar. Moving from the left to right, we've got our Start button. We have a search box, which also serves as a means of entering and using Cortana. We have some default icons on the desktop for things like Task View, the Edge web browser, our File Explorer, and the Windows Store. And over on the right side, we've got our notification area that gives us things that we're familiar with from Windows 7, date and time, network status, various other applications that may be running that are hidden here in this small pop-up window. So the general lay of the land is pretty familiar to us. So let's go ahead and first of all take a look at our new Start menu, and we can access that by, as we've done previously, by clicking on the Start button. And we are exposed to the newly designed Start menu, which under the new update, anniversary update, consists of 3 columns. A very narrow, skinny column over here on the left, which contains a couple of icons on it, indicating the current user, settings, and power management. We have the center column, which represents the original Start menu from Windows 7, with the one new change in that this particular column no longer has the All Programs menu item that Windows 7 used to have. All of these programs are now listed in alphabetical order, with the very top of the column being dedicated to those applications that have been most recently installed and those applications that are most used. And that most used feature is dynamically determined based on how frequently any given application is used. And the final column is the column that's dedicated to the tile element that was introduced in Windows 8 and 8.1. Some of these tiles represent the universal Windows application, and those tiles provide the display of dynamic content that's pushed directly to the tile itself. You can see, for example, that the news tile is constantly changing with news information that's being pushed to the tile without the news application actually being in use. And the same is true with the weather and some other applications. You'll notice that the way I've got this configured, I have some tiles that represent original Microsoft desktop applications like Microsoft Publisher, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel. Those do not have dynamic information to display to you because they're not technically the universal Windows type of application. But nonetheless, they can have a tile established for them on the tile section of the new Start menu. A couple of other nice features about this before we get into any details about each of the columns is that the menu is resizable, both in height and in width. Simply by clicking and dragging on the top and right edge. Additionally, if we right-click on the Start button, we're provided with a quick access menu that allows us to use a wide variety of computer management programs that come bundled with Windows 10, including access to our old friend Control Panel, which has been part of Windows 7 for a long time. So let's go ahead and take a little bit closer look at these 3 columns that are part of the Start menu. The first one over here on the very far left side can be expanded by clicking on the menu icon at the top of this column, and when we do so, you'll notice that it's a flyout menu that expands and shows us 3 items that are available for our use in this particular portion of the Start menu. The first one at the bottom is a power button, which provides us kind of the stock standard features that we've grown accustomed to. We can turn the machine off, we can restart it, or we can put it into sleep mode. Nothing particularly fancy about that. The next one up is called Settings, and if we click on this, it will expose the new interface that Microsoft has included with Windows 10 that's designed to replace Control Panel. Although it doesn't replace it in full, it does provide much of the same functionality as the old Control Panel did. Things like system settings, devices, printers, scanners, etc. and so on, network interface, personalization, the accounts that are on the machine, how to set up for time and language settings, ease of access, privacy, which we'll talk about, and update and security, which we'll also briefly touch upon. So this is a new interface, and the more you use Microsoft Windows 10, the more you're going to find yourself using that. And finally, there is an icon here that allows you to address some issues regarding the current user of the machine. The user can sign out, they can lock it, you can change accounts, pretty much similar to what we've seen with Windows 7. You'll notice that there's quite a bit of space here left for additional icons. Those can be user-defined from a select list of options that Microsoft provides to you. You can also add things to it like File Manager, things like network connectivity, that sort of thing that you might find yourself frequently using. They allow you to put it here in this column for quick access. Moving to the next column is the original Windows 7 Start menu, and again, these are all of the programs that are listed on this machine. There are no references to all programs because that's been done away with. Rather, we've got most used, which again are dynamically selected by the computer based on your usage, and then an alphabetized list of the programs that are on the machine. Some of these, as you'll notice, are represented by an icon for the application itself, in this case, let's say Adobe Reader. Others are represented by a folder, and by clicking on the folder, we actually expose one or more programs that are part of that application folder. If we've got a lot of programs on the machine and we don't want to spend a lot of time scrolling through this list, we can simply click on a letter that will expose an alphabet for us that displays the first letter of any application that's loaded on the machine, and by clicking on that letter it will take us to that point in the list. So it's just a quick and easy way to kind of navigate around. So a new design, a new appearance, but much of the same functionality as the original Start menu in Windows 7. Let's talk a little bit about the tiles. Again, some of these tiles are dynamic. They change content because they're universal Windows applications, and some are static. Let's go ahead and give ourselves a little more room to work with here. Needless to say, like desktop icons, for example, tiles are movable. We can click and drag these folks anywhere we want. Tiles are resizable. We can right-click and we can select from a large size, a medium size, or a wide size rather, excuse me. And we'll go to a small size. So that's a nice feature. You can cram a lot of tiles into that space if you want. Go back and set that to medium. And obviously, as you've seen, when we click on a tile, the application starts. Or if you're using a touch-enabled device, if you tap on the tile, the application starts. One nice feature about the tile is that if you wanted to uninstall a Windows Universal app, that is to say an app that you got from the Windows Store, for example, let's do news. And you'll notice that it gives us an uninstall option. So we can uninstall the application directly from the Start menu. We probably should add an application since we're talking about the Start menu. Let's go ahead and use the Windows Store by clicking on the Windows Store icon. And this is kind of like the Apple Store, or where you can go buy apps or get free apps from Apple. Let's do this. I use an application called Speed Test. Go ahead and select that, and we'll simply install it. It takes a few moments to download the application. The application has been installed. We can go ahead and launch it from here if we wish. And we'll notice that when we return to our Start menu, that at the very top of our listing of applications, the network speed test shows as having been recently installed. And if we'd like to have that application's tile appear on our Start menu, we can simply right-click on it and select the Pin to Start option, and there it is. Pretty quick and simple. So a lot of new things, a lot of similar things, and a nice integration of both of those means of accessing programs that are on our computer. Some of you may recall that when Windows 8 was first released, Microsoft decided to do away with the Start button in the Start menu. That was a big problem. They got a lot of negative pushback from the user community, and as a result they made a smart decision to reintroduce that and incorporate it with their tile element, tile construct that they did introduce with Windows 8 and Windows 8.1. So some good things there as far as the Start menu is concerned. Let's go ahead and take a little bit of an additional look at Cortana. As you noticed at the beginning of the presentation, Cortana can be voice activated by the cue, "Hey Cortana." It can also be activated by pressing this microphone icon that appears on the right side of this search field. And if you do that, then you don't have to say, "Hey Cortana." You can simply press on the microphone, "What time is it?" and make your query. Of course, it was listening to me while I said all that, so let's try this again. "What time is it?"
It's 12:04 p.m. in Wheaton.
I can do the same thing by not clicking on the microphone. "Hey Cortana, what time is it?"
Right now, it's 12:04 p.m. in Wheaton.
So you've got some options there in terms of how you might want to activate that voice feature. But in addition, there is a user interface associated with Cortana, and if we click on the search box, the user interface for Cortana will open up. And it consists of an informational dashboard here on the right side that's comprised of these various elements that Microsoft calls cards. These cards are user-defined. You can select them from a list of options that are available in the settings of Cortana. On this particular machine, we've got today's calendar. We've got some news items on another card. We've got some information related to perhaps scheduling issues. We've got weather, and we've got tips and tricks. All of these cards have an ellipsis up here in the right-hand corner that you can click to expose additional information about the card. And in addition to that, there are mechanisms available for you to select those cards by using the notebook feature, which is represented by the notebook icon on the left. And this will expose to you a flyout menu providing you information about yourself, your accounts, your Outlook accounts, for example, any reminders that you may have, other connected accounts, permissions for applications. And below that is a list of all of the various subjects that you can include for the cards on the informational dashboard for Cortana. So you can customize that depending on your needs and interests. Additionally, there's a gear icon here which represents the settings for Cortana that allow you to turn it on, turn it off, provides you the opportunity to get Cortana familiar with the way you speak and the way you enunciate, so it's able to determine more accurately what you're saying, and a variety of other settings that are available to you with respect to Cortana itself. So let's do a couple of other things with Cortana for voice purposes. One nice feature about it is that you can use it to search for files on your operating system. On this particular machine, I have an Excel spreadsheet called My Budget. And let's ask Cortana to find it for us. "Hey Cortana, Find My Budget spreadsheet. Now you'll notice here it is, My Budget Excel SX. It's a Microsoft Excel worksheet. If we mouse over the information, it'll tell us where it is. Whoop, my mistake. In the Documents folder of the admin user. So that's a nice feature. If you've created a file, you've saved it, you know what its name is, but you can't remember it, Cortana likely is going to be able to help you out. Additionally, if you have multiple files with the same name as I do on this machine, Cortana is going to help you out with that as well. Hey Cortana, find My Budget. Now, I have 3 different files on this machine. I have a My Budget text document, I have a My Budget spreadsheet, and I have a My Budget Word document. And I can determine the location of each one of those by simply mousing over it, and it will tell me exactly where it is. And if I want to launch it, I can just go ahead and click on the icon, and off it goes. So that's a nice feature. Some additional features relate to things like mapping. Let's say we've got to go to O'Hare Airport this afternoon, and we'd like to know how long it's going to take us to do that. Hey Cortana, how long will it take me to get to O'Hare Airport?
It'll take 42 minutes to drive to Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Illinois. It's about 27 miles away.
You'll notice that Cortana has presented us with a little map with a proposed route. Let's say we'd like to see some options for that. Hey Cortana, get me directions to O'Hare Airport.
Getting you directions to Chicago O'Hare International Airport.
So, Cortana has determined where we are. You'll notice that I don't live too far from here. Here's my home location, but Cortana and the operating system has correctly determined where we are currently and has provided us with a nice map with several different options for how we might want to get to O'Hare, each one of which provides information about distance, driving time, tolls, road conditions, etc., and so on. Nice feature. Microsoft has done a good job here. They're obviously competing with Google. Google's pretty much the top dog when it comes to mapping, geolocation services, that sort of thing. But Microsoft has done a pretty good job in that regard and have nicely integrated that with their Cortana voice activated application. Let's do a couple of other things. Reminders are good. Hey Cortana, remind me to make dinner reservations tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Sure, I can remind you to make dinner at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes.
Got it.
Now that reminder will appear in my reminders list if I use the user interface for Cortana. And tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if I haven't deleted that reminder, I'll get a reminder in my notification area that, hey, you got to make dinner reservations, so you better get on the ball. So that's a nice feature. We've done a finding things, we've done reminders, we've done directions, we've gotten information about how long it's going to take to get someplace. There's a lot of other things you can do with Cortana. Let's do some simple math just to wrap it up. Hey Cortana, what's 125 times 13?
That makes 1,625.
So a lot of nice things that you can do with Cortana. It's a nice feature, and it's certainly something that if you are going to run Windows 10, it's something you're going to want to play around with. Let's move on to the Edge browser. The Edge browser is the new addition to the browser lineup from Microsoft. It's got a significantly cleaner appearance to it, a lot cleaner lines, but many of the features are the same as you see in most browsers today. We've got the ability to have multiple tabs. Here we have People's Resource Center. Here we have New York Times. We have things like back page, forward page. We have refresh buttons. We have a home page button. Moving over here to the right side of the screen, we have minimize, maximize, close buttons. All the same kind of stuff that we've grown to know and love. And we've got some additional items here. Here's our address bar. And over here we've got a couple of new features. This one we'll get to in just a moment. We've got the ability to bookmark a page or a site or add it to what's called a reading list. We have another feature here that's called our hub, which is a combination of our favorites, reading list, our past browsing history, as well as a list of downloads that we've undertaken with the machine. We've got an icon here that represents the ability to make a web note, which we'll demonstrate in just a minute. Actually, the ability to write or mark on a web page. An icon here that allows us to share a web page or a web note that we've made on a web page. And finally, an ellipsis that will open additional menu settings, one of which is the opportunity to open the current page with Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer hasn't gone away. It's still part of the operating system. You're going to ask yourself rightly, well, why have we got two browsers from Microsoft in the same operating system? And the reason is that the Edge browser does not support certain technologies that were used in the past that have been proven to be somewhat vulnerable in terms of security issues. The Edge browser is made with newer technology, whereas the browser Internet Explorer will use some of those more troubling applications and technologies, but there are many, many websites that still use those technologies, and consequently Microsoft has given you, the user, the opportunity to launch the old browser if in fact you need to use it. So here's the same page that we were looking at before in Internet Explorer. Let's take a look at some of these features of the new Edge browser. And as I said before, we've got the ability to have multiple tabs. And I like to use this New York Times page as an example for some of these. And as you know, when you go to any home page for a major newspaper, or most likely any newspaper, you're going to find that there are multiple stories available for you to select from the home page and read. Let's go ahead and just select this one. And you'll notice that when the page loads, that it contains a lot of information that doesn't necessarily relate to the article itself. We've got a lot of stuff up here about other articles. We've got information along the right side about other articles. We've even got some advertising information in here. So it can be, well, not the most pleasant of reading experiences. Microsoft has provided us with this new feature called Reading View. You'll notice that the icon up here in the just to the right of the address bar provides us the opportunity to click on it, and it will place this particular article into a much cleaner, easier to read display of information. No ads, no anything else to distract our attention from. So it's a very nice feature, and one that you can use if you are particularly interested in using the next feature, which is our web note. Let's say that we've read this article and we're particularly interested in highlighting certain portions of it because we're going to save it and send it to someone. We can go ahead and use web notes by clicking on the icon that looks like a pen in a square. The application will switch into Web Notes view. We can select on a highlighter application, and we can use that to highlight what we might want to draw attention to for the person that we're going to send this article to. Now, we can save this article in its current state. We can save it to a reading list. We can save it to a favorite list. Let's just go ahead and save it to our reading list. And we can also send it to someone. We could email it. We could use OneNote, which is a note-keeping application. 3D Builder probably shouldn't be in this list, but Cortana Reminders certainly could be, so that we have a way of actually sharing this particular web page with the information that we've highlighted to anybody we would want to, either text to or email to. It's a nice feature. I had mentioned that we had saved this article to our reading list. Let's go ahead and take this article out of reading view. We'll go to our hub and we'll go to our reading list, and there is the reading view of the article that we just marked up. It's available for us to read whether we're online or offline. It's a nice feature. Let's take a look at a couple of other things. We'll go to our hub. The hub provides us the opportunity, just like any browser, to bookmark a page. If we want to bookmark the PRC page, we can certainly do that simply by clicking on the star and adding it to our favorites list, so that it will appear in our favorites list should we want to return to it at any point in time. Pretty standard stuff. The next selection for us in the hub is our reading list, which we've just seen. Another feature provides us with a list of our browsing history in the last hour, yesterday, and it'll even go into previous weeks. So that if you were at a website that you were using for research or business purposes or personal purposes that you were really interested in and you were really happy that you found, but you forgot to bookmark it, chances are pretty good that you'll be able to find it in your browsing history and return to it. Now, browsing history has always been available in older browsers, but it's been a little bit more difficult to get to. And it's been more or less something that's thought of, well, I got to clean it out from time to time. And indeed you do, but this, I think, adds a new level of usability to that information and provides you the opportunity of returning to a location that you were browsing to previously. Additionally, we've seen how to mark up a page, and we've seen how to share a page, and we've seen how to use other options that are available to us from the menu for Microsoft Edge, including the use of Internet Explorer. So in general, it's a pretty good browser. I think that, at least in my experience with it, the most recent upgrade, the anniversary upgrade, has improved the performance of the browser and improved its usability. So I think it's a good addition. Probably not quite as good as Google Chrome, but getting pretty close. So we've done Start Menu, we've done Cortana, we've done the Edge browser. Let's take a look at Task View. Task View relates to virtual desktops, and it kind of is a productivity tool and an enhancement tool, an ease of navigation enhancement tool, and it works kind of like this. We've all been down this road before where we have multiple applications that are running on our desktop all at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and launch 4 applications here. Now, we can tell that all of these applications are running because they have an application icon on the taskbar, and each one of those icons is underlined by a blue bar. That tells you that they're running. They're up and running, available for your use. And if you wanted to use Word, you could simply click on the Word icon and Word would be available to you. If you wanted to switch over to Excel, you can do the same thing. Now the idea behind task view is that you might be in a situation where you want to segregate the use of applications based on your particular need. So, for example, you may have these 4 applications open for your work purposes, but you also may want to have additional applications open for personal use. And you may not necessarily want to have all of that stuff open on the same desktop, cluttering up the taskbar and creating something of a management problem. Task View allows you to address that by, first of all, clicking on the Task View icon. And when you do that, you get this thumbnail representation of the 4 applications that are currently running on desktop number 1. If we wanted to create a new desktop so that we could launch additional applications in and kind of segregate them from our work applications, we can click on the plus sign, and we have desktop number 2. And when we click on the thumbnail representation of desktop number 2, we get a clean display of our original desktop, indicating that there are no applications running on desktop number 2. So that if I wanted to now have, let's say, my news app running, and if I wanted to have my weather app running, and if I wanted to have my calendar app running, all 3 of these are now up and running on desktop 2. You can see that they are all represented by icons on the taskbar, each underlined, so that I now have 2 virtual desktops available for me to use. How do I access them? Well, I simply go back to my Task View icon, click on it, and you'll notice now that I am using desktop 2. Our thumbnail representations of the 3 applications that are being run on desktop number 2. If I want to go back and use something on desktop number 1, I can simply mouse over it. It will display to me the 4 applications that are running on desktop number 1, and I can reopen desktop number 1 and begin using any of those applications that I want. So it's a nice way of segregating applications depending on your particular use and need. Again, it's not a new feature. It's been around in Linux distributions for a long time. Apple has had it. Microsoft wisely has introduced it with Windows 10. Now you ask yourself, let's say that I'm doing some work in an application on desktop number 2. And let's say that somehow inadvertently I closed desktop number 2 before I saved the work that I was doing on one of those applications. Is your work lost? Do those applications close automatically? The answer is no. If I inadvertently close desktop number 2, you'll notice that those 3 applications, calendar, weather, and news, have all migrated to desktop number 1. So desktop number 1 now has 7 applications running on it, and if I needed to continue doing some work in my calendar that I was before, I can go ahead and do that. Nothing's lost, no harm, no foul. It's nice also with multiple monitors, which brings us to our next topic, which is Snap Assist. And Snap Assist is a way for us to easily and conveniently display multiple applications on our computer screen at the same time, kind of like the old ways that Microsoft Windows 7 would provide us display applications side by side or stacked or tiled. Those things didn't work real well sometimes. So let's see, we'll go ahead and do Publisher, and we'll go ahead and do Notepad. So now I have 4 applications all running on the same desktop. Let's go ahead and orientate these so that each one of them occupies a quarter of the screen. I'm going to go ahead and click and drag on the title bar for this application and bring it down here. And we have Notepad now occupying the lower left-hand quadrant. Let's go ahead and take Publisher. It's now occupying the lower right-hand quadrant. Let's go ahead and do Excel and put it up here in the upper right. And Word now occupies the upper left. Now, it's a nice way of having all of these applications open and available for your use. They're displayed easily. You can simply click the Maximize button to begin using the application. If you want to replace it where it was, drag it back to its original locale. And it's a terrific feature if you are using a computer that has multiple monitors, because you can do the same thing on the second monitor and effectively have another 4 applications available for you to use right away. So it's a very good productivity enhancement that goes along with the use of virtual desktops. It's a nice feature. And I think is superior to the old side-by-side, up-down, tiled. And the functionality of those features never seem to work quite right in Windows 7. Maybe that was me, maybe that was the OS. We'll go ahead and close this. Go ahead and close this. And just for the sake of conversation, let's do this. And there's an easy way to do side by side. You can also do half and two on the right side above and below each other. So it's a nice, easy way to orientate these applications on your computer screen. So let's talk about our last 2 features.
Ben, can I
Yep.
just ask one thing?
Yep.
You maximize these windows before you close them. Can you close them while they're
Yep.
only... Oh, you
Yeah,
can.
yeah, it's just force of habit more than anything else. The last 2 items are Windows Defender and our privacy issues. Windows Defender was, and is, but was originally an application that was made available for download to Windows XP, so it goes back a way. It was then bundled with Windows Vista and Windows 7. It was supplanted in Windows 7 by a product called Microsoft Security Essentials, and has been reintroduced in a substantially better fashion in Windows 10, again as Windows Defender. Windows Defender is an anti-malware, antivirus piece of software. It starts automatically when your computer starts, and you will know that it's running because you will see an icon for it in your taskbar that looks like this shield. Let's go ahead and start Windows Defender by double-clicking on that icon. And you'll get a display that looks pretty much like if you're currently using a PRC-supplied Windows 7 machine. It looks kind of like Microsoft Security Essentials, but it's been renamed again to its original name of Windows Defender and has very much the same interface. Let's take a quick look at this. The original display of information should show us that our PC is being monitored and protected. We've got a nice green check mark there that provides us with a nice sense of security, that everything is well and we're good to go. It provides us some information about real-time protection, which is on. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. It tells us that our virus and spyware definitions are up to date. That's a list that's downloaded to your Windows Defender periodically with the current list of a lot of known bad spyware, malware, what have you. It gives you the opportunity to manually launch a scan right now of 3 different flavors: a quick scan, a full scan, or a custom scan. Custom scan would allow you to, let's say, skip certain files or folders. And it also provides us information as to when the last scan occurred. In this case, it occurred on November 12th at 8:27 in the evening. The next tab, the Update tab, provides us specific information as to our virus definition list. Definitions created on, definitions last updated, virus definition revision, version, and spyware definition version. All of that information is available to you to see when the last time your virus definition list was updated. It's pretty important that that be up to date. And you'll notice that each line item gives you the time and date that the virus definition was last updated. If you happen to use Windows Defender and you go to this particular tab of the interface, and you'll notice that the last time your virus definitions were updated was in September, then it's time for you to press that button and update your virus definitions. That will only occur, however, if your machine is online, because those virus definitions are downloaded to you from Microsoft. And finally, there's a History tab, which provides you the opportunity to see any bad actors that may in fact have been downloaded to your machine inadvertently that were swept up and caught by Windows Defender. If we wanted to see quarantined items, they would be listed here. If we wanted to see allowed items that we had decided to allow onto our machine, they would be listed here. And if we wanted to see all detected items, you would see the detailed information here. Now, there are additional settings related to Windows Defender that are very important to know about, and that can be accessed by clicking on the Settings button up here in the upper right-hand corner of the application. And when we do that, the Settings feature of the operating system is launched, and it provides us with some additional settings for Windows Defender. If we wanted to temporarily turn it off, we could do so by using this slider. Now, it's not going to stay off indefinitely. If we forget to turn it back on, it's going to turn itself back on. But if, for example, we were having trouble installing a piece of software and we thought it might be due to Windows Defender, we could temporarily disable it so that we could see if we could install that piece of software. Cloud-based protection is pretty important. Get real-time protection when Windows Defender sends info to Microsoft about potential security threats. This feature works best with automatic sample submission enabled. What that means is that if automatic sample submission is enabled, which it is on this machine, a process like this occurs. Let's say that you're in the process of downloading a file. Windows Defender says, gee, this isn't on my list of suspected pieces of malware, but there's something about it that's not quite right. Windows Defender will automatically upload that file and information about it to Microsoft's cloud-based protection system, which will then look at it and say, yeah, maybe that's not something you want on your machine, and it might block your addition of that particular application to your computer. So it's a nice feature and should always be on, and automatic sample submission should always be on. You are given the opportunity of excluding certain files from being scanned. What would they be? Well, you don't need to scan your resume every time, right? You know what that is. You created it. Chances are it's not infected with anything. So it does provide you with the opportunity of excluding certain files from being scanned. And another new feature is that it provides you the opportunity of running a scan before your computer boots. What's the benefit of that? Well, the benefit is that there are a number of known pieces of malware and spyware that will infect your computer in a place that isn't scanned when the operating system is running. And in fact, the only way you can detect those pieces of malware or viruses are to scan the system before the system actually boots up. And this particular new feature, the Scan Offline feature, allows you to do just that. If you think you've got a piece of malware or spyware or virus that's infected your computer, but that can only be found prior to the operating system actually booting up, this option will allow you to do it. It'll shut your machine down, it'll restart it, but before it boots the operating system, it will scan your computer and find any bad actors that are there, isolate them, quarantine them, and then start your operating system. So it's a nice feature. And finally, let's talk briefly about privacy issues. We can access our privacy settings by going to our Start menu, using the Settings button to open the new Settings interface, and select Privacy. Now, a lot was made of privacy concerns and privacy issues related to Windows 10 when it was first introduced. And a lot of it got a lot of press, but a lot of it was misleading and ill-informed or misinformed, and I think primarily because Microsoft didn't do a really good job of educating its user community on what information they were gathering, and more importantly, how people could address those issues if they had privacy concerns. And these settings, and there are all sorts of them, provide you the opportunity of addressing privacy issues that you may have. These are general privacy settings, but there are all sorts of privacy settings relating to these varying functions. Your location, what your camera does, what your microphone does or doesn't do, notifications, speech and inking. All of these are available to you to change or disable or modify in whatever way you want. And let's just take a look at some of these on the General tab. The first one, let apps use my advertising ID for experiences across apps. Turning this off will reset your ID. You've all had this experience. You've gone to a website and you've purchased something. I give the example of a purchase I recently made. I went to a website of a firm called MCM Electronics. They sell computer gear and some other stuff. And I bought a few items. And ever since I made that purchase, ads for MCM Electronics will appear, let's say if I go to the New York Times, there might be an ad for MCM Electronics. That's because I've allowed that particular piece of functionality to work on the operating system. I can disable that. I can turn it off, as I have on this particular display. Now that doesn't mean you're never going to get any ads. You will, but it's going to limit those sorts of ads. And you have the ability to address that in these various settings. Turn on the Smart Screen filter to check web content that apply to the user's store, to the Windows Store apps use. It's probably a good thing to have that on. It can prevent you from, let's say, going to a website that might not necessarily be a good place to go to. You can send Microsoft information about how I write to help improve my typing and writing in the future. You might have some concerns about that. You might want to turn it off, and you can do that. Now you'll notice it doesn't say send Microsoft info about what I write. It says how I write. So, if you use a particular word frequently in the way you, let's say, compose emails, that frequency might be noted by Microsoft, and it might be used in the future to speed up your typing. But again, it might be something that you don't want Microsoft to have any information about. You can turn it off. Let websites provide locally relevant content by accessing my language list. Nothing really harmful about that. If you wanted to know if there were some pizza places close by, having that turned on might be able to provide you that information. Let apps on my other devices open apps and continue experiences on this device. Remember, this operating system is intended to run not only on laptops, desktops, but also on tablets and smartphones, the Windows Phone. So having this enabled allows you to continue to use an app or have experience that you were enjoying on your Windows Phone be migrated and available to you also on your desktop or laptop. This last one, let apps on my other devices use Bluetooth to open apps. That's probably something that would relate more toward tablet, smartphone environments. But again, there are many, many, many settings that you can look at, turn off, turn on, customize to suit your particular need. And on almost every one of these pages, there is a link to the privacy statement of Microsoft, which you can read at your convenience. So there's a lot there, but in general, many of those features are enhancements that improve the experience that you have when you're using the operating system on whatever device you might be using. Anything else? Appreciate your coming.